It is. It went off. Put it louder. Here. Okay. There we go. Thank you, Tab. Okay. Welcome back to Around the World with Dee and Friends. I'm sorry for that. For some reason, I got kicked out. I don't know why. And I'm going to see if I can. Oops. No, I shouldn't. I don't know what's going on with Harsh. Yeah, I'm going to get us back into what I was talking about before. But I'm just now need to build everybody up and let people know I'm back live again. Let Evelina know. I don't know what caused me to go off. No, you stay down. Stay down. I can't. Alexis, please. Oh, I just don't want you to knock me offline again. Come on. Just figure out how to get in here. Okay, that was the dog wanting to get up here with me. Well, anyway, let me get back to what I was talking about. And I was glad, well, it took me a while before I actually came into the room to see what was going on. And then I saw the show wasn't up. And it was end. I was like, how the heck did that happen? Now I have to go back to where I was. And I don't know how much. Baby got hurt. Okay. Let me see here. Okay, here I am back again. Oh, have a good night. Oh, good night. Hello, Kathleen. Yeah, I was on here and I got kicked off. And the show, it says dogs sound hot. Yeah, they just came in from outside. So yeah, they're drinking up some water now. You know how to get the show back online because for some reason I was talking about the West Bank, and the next thing you know, my laptop just said the show was over. And I didn't know that until I had to come back in the room again to the studio because I was over talking about stuff in the West Bank. I was on X. So then I had to come back. So I just, right now, I'm going to see if I can find the show on my Facebook to share it around. Okay, it says I'm live. What's this? Okay, let me get off of this. Please, this new phone. Okay, I try to find people. Okay, here we are. And let me tag Evelina. I'll send her a messenger. Send it out again in Messenger. So people know that I'm back again. And then I'll just tag. Okay, just looking for people. Okay. Let me share it. This is crazy. It really is. All of a sudden, it just says that I'm not on when I'm on. Okay. Let's switch over to. I didn't realize I was going to have to switch over to my other account too. I'll let them know over there if people are watching over there. And then I can get back to what I was talking about. Like, I can't believe that. I was talking for a while too. And I didn't know the show was off. The show was just turned off. That was weird. I never had that happen before. Okay. What the heck? I'll have to go over here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh yeah, it was terrible. The election after the elections in Colombia. Yeah, the earthquake. Yeah, Madeline's okay. Madeline is okay. I was worried about her because I hadn't seen her online, and obviously I know there was a hurricane, but I wanted to make sure a hurricane, a earthquake. I wanted to make sure she was okay, and she said yes. She had gotten on in the evening, early evening. Their electric came back on, and she was like, "I very know she was okay," but she said, "Yeah, the room was shaking. Her books fell off the bookshelf, and the cat freaked out, and it was just, it was overwhelming. She'd been around earthquakes before, but this was really, really strong. But she's okay, and the cat's okay." Okay, and right now, what I'm going to do is get back to what I was talking about. Um, and hopefully I stay on. It's not going to be abruptly ended. That definitely was weird. And I don't know how much people heard, but this is a gentleman that, in the West Bank, Palestinian Noor al-Din Fayad, that he was abducted. His home was, they said the occupation forces stormed his home in the town of Al Yamoun in west of Jenin in the northern occupied West Bank. It's just horrible. It's horrible what they do to people. And here they also, Israeli occupation forces abduct several Palestinian workers while storming the village of Barja, southwest of Jenin in the northern occupied West Bank. Um, Horrible. And here, this is the Palestinian-American family. It says a Palestinian-American family has remained trapped inside their home on the outskirts of Kusra, south of Nablus in the occupied West Bank, for a third consecutive day, as extremists, or we can call them thugs, um, Israeli settlers and soldiers continue to block access to the property. The homeowner, Yosef Hassan, his wife, and their two daughters, aged 2 and 4, are running out of food after settlers cut the electricity and prevented food, water, journalists, and ambulances from reaching the house. The family's 2-year-old daughter also requires medical attention. Settlers have erected a makeshift structure directly in front of the two-story home, blocking the family's entrance and preventing them from leaving or receiving assistance. Israeli occupation soldiers arrived at the site but did not remove the settlers or the thugs. So the occupation forces were there and they did not remove the settlers. And now there's an investigation going on. According to those who lead the IOF, they were saying that this is that they're going to look into this because this should not be happening. This is wrong, and they are going to be investigating the situation. Okay, and we're going to play this again.
הם עומדים.
There's parts of it that do go into English.
למה אתם מתנחלים עדיין בבית? זה הם! זה מתנחלים! זה המתנחלים! זה המתנחלים! עכשיו בבית של הפלסטינים! למה הם שם? למה הם שם?
I'm going to tell you what happened today, and then I'm going to show you a series of faces. And I need you to make these motherfuckers the most famous people in the world, because today I witnessed a genuine crime against humanity. It happened before my very eyes, and it was done by specific people. And these motherfuckers need to be afraid of ever leaving this country for the rest of their fucking pathetic lives. This is the house of Yusuf in Qusra, and right now it is literally under siege by the settlers. They're not allowing anybody to enter or exit. And today, Yusuf and his family, including children, have run out of food. So today we attempted to deliver the food to them, together with some activists and residents. And we were blocked by the settlers, who then called the army, and the army declared the whole area a closed military zone. This means that only residents are allowed to stay there, and both us, as the activists, and the settlers are supposed to leave by law. Except, of course, the army just kicked us out and allowed the settlers to stay.
הם עומדים שם בשטח פלסטיני. You want to tell the fucking settlers to move out of the way? Shut the fuck up. הם עומדים שם עכשיו. למה? אתם מתנחלים? אל תיגע בי, אל תיגע בי. אל תיגע בי. למה אתם מתנחלים עדיין שם?
These settler terrorists have launched countless attacks on the village of Qusra, resulting in several deaths, and most recently the burning of a mosque. So today, these soldiers have allowed the settlers to continue the siege of Yusuf's house and literally forbade us from delivering food to Yusuf and his children.
בני אדם שם, בלי אוכל, בלי מים, בגלל המסתננים פה.
אין בעיה. שתות לכם, אתם נמצאים במקום שהוא מסוכן. בבקשה. יאללה, קדימה.
So these settlers and these soldiers are literally starving children to death in the West Bank today, right now as I'm recording this. I will make a separate post with every face that I managed to film today of all of those motherfuckers who, if there is any justice in the world, will one day end up at the fucking Hague.
And that's where they should go, is to the Hague. Because what they're doing is illegal. Okay, and I was just over in the studio, and I saw Kathleen has some comments here. Kathleen says, evil by U.S. will get us shook too. Eclipse for good. And she says, we moved after being in the 1971 earthquake, Rosemead, California. And also, whoa, evil Zionists to get double cup. Yeah, and people don't realize karma. They don't realize, that the universe, when we talk about spiritual energy, and now they talk about, the eclipse energy. And we'll see. But this is the thing that makes up generational curses that we hear about. When evil is done by families. And here, far-right Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich called on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to prevent the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas from returning to the West Bank after he visited Turkey. Smotrich also described the Palestinian Authority as a terrorist entity and called for its dismantling. He's a nut because as we all know, the Palestinian Authority serviced Israel, and he just wants to get rid of everything that's Palestinian. He's got this grand plan to wipe out the entire West Bank and build Jewish settlements. But these Jewish settlements are all illegal under international law. So with that, all those that would move into that are and also those planning on moving into these illegal settlements, they will have to leave because it's illegal for them to be there. They think they're going to prevent a Palestinian state. Well, they're going to have to move out. Palestinians had to move out of their homes for an Israeli state to be created. Well, you're going to have to move out for the Palestinian state. Israeli occupation forces abduct Palestinian Yasser Marjan after storming his home in the village of Kfar Khalil, east of Nablus in the northern occupied West Bank. And here we go again. Israeli occupation forces and settlers blocked an ambulance from reaching a Palestinian family trapped inside their home under siege by extremist Israeli settler gangs on the outskirts of Qusra, south of Nablus in the occupied West Bank. And we just spoke about this family. And this article says the family, including children, has reportedly been left without food, water, or electricity as they say settlers, and I will call them thugs, surrounded the home and prevented access to it. Activist Andrei, and we heard him, Karzovsky said Israeli occupation soldiers detained and forcibly removed activists who attempted to deliver food and essential supplies to the besieged family. According to Krasanovsky, the occupation soldiers also prevented the activists from reaching the home while allowing the settler gangs and forcing the siege to remain in place. And as we said, the Israeli government had said that they're going to be looking into that. Or those in charge of the IOF will be looking into that. And you say, where's Mike Huckabee? This is a Palestinian-American family. Where is he? And then you have the activist, which it's Ben Gvir, is causing problems with activists with their visas. And these are Jewish activists.
روح لورا يمكن في كمان ناس ما بيشوفوا
Block them.
ارجع بدي الف
روح هلا روح
وين الجيش بيجوش؟
ما بيجوا هم كلهم مع بعض.
This was done to an Israeli.
روح
He's trying to.
روح هلا
اجوا الجيش؟
اجا هم هون
They don't care. They don't care. There's an ambulance coming, blocking an ambulance. But nobody holds them accountable. So this is why the Israeli thugs do what they do, because they're not held accountable for their actions.
Phone back.
The Israeli government can get away with all this. Where's my Huckabee?
خيالين بكشا.
And here, Israeli occupation artillery shells the town of Wadi al-Hajir, south of Lebanon. And nobody's holding them accountable. Okay, let me see your comments. Yep, come on, enough doom and gloom. Geez, yeah, they get away with all of this. And no one's there. No one's there for the Palestinians. That's what's infuriating. For bargain purposes, for potential use in future exchange deals, even though there are currently no Israelis being held captive by the Palestinian resistance. And we're not seeing a bunch of people screaming about the hostages, about the Palestinian hostages. I mean, this is horrible. And here, Israeli occupation forces fire flares over the town of Beit Fajar, south of Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. South of Bethlehem. And you think all of this region would be a concern to Mike Huckabee, but it's not. Israeli occupation forces detonate displaced Lebanese civilians' homes in the town of Beit Yehoun, South Lebanon. Yeah, in southern Lebanon, that is part of the Greater Israel plan. They want to clear the area out and build Jewish settlements. That's the intention. Israeli occupation forces fire flares over the Al-Qasrat neighborhood near the Qalandia refugee camp north of occupied Jerusalem. And they get away with all this. No one stops them. Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor accused Israel of selectively manipulating malnutrition data from Gaza and using the 0.5% figure from the 2026 nutrition survey led by the UNICEF Nutrition Cluster to deny the famine indicators reported by the Integrated Food Service Phase Classification. The monitor said this figure, which is based solely on the weight for height indicator, effectively means that 1 in every 77 children under the age of 5 suffers from acute malnutrition. The rate rises to around 1.3% when other indicators, such as mid-upper arm circumference, are taken into account. The monitor noted that Israel ignored the stunting indicator, which stood at 12.2% among children, explaining that stunting reflects long-term nutritional deprivation and chronic malnutrition and cannot be assessed through a short-term wasting indicator alone. It added that the survey data cover a limited period and do not necessarily capture cases that occurred before or after the survey or repeated relapses. But still, it's still horrific. Israel manipulates Gaza starvation data. Children are starving, and it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't faze them at all. 1 in 77 children under 5 suffering from acute malnutrition, and the Israeli government is fine with that. They do not care. They have no respect for human life whatsoever. And here we go again. Extremist Israeli settler gang attempts to storm the Abu Faza Palestinian community near the village of Al-Tabay, east of Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. Guys, that's what they do. They're a bunch of thugs. They have the Israeli occupation on their side. They're not held accountable. So they go around doing what they do. And here, extremist Israeli settlers conduct provocative tours in the village of Samra and the Palestinian North Jordan Valley. They're harassing people. Israeli occupation forces detonate displaced Lebanese civilian homes in the town of Hadatha, southern Lebanon. I mean, this is sickening, and no one's stopping them. Nobody is stopping them. It's sickening. It's against international law, and they do what they do because nobody holds them accountable. Extremist Israeli settler militias attack a Palestinian vehicle with stones and pepper spray on the road between the village of Abu Falah and Al-Mughayr, northeast of Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. Nobody cares. So they do what they want because nobody stops them. And I shouldn't really say nobody cares. There are so many people that do care, but they can't do anything about it. They don't have the ability. We see the Jewish activist over there trying to help and do the right thing. And Ben Gvir is going after them. He's a sick man, Ben Gvir. Israeli occupation forces abduct brothers Salah and Muhammad Ibrahim Shanan and subjected them to abuse after storming their home in Wadi al-Rakim, south of Hebron, in the occupied West Bank. Israeli occupation forces detonate displaced Lebanese civilians' homes in the town of Hadatha, southern Lebanon. And they're just bombing the hell out of southern Lebanon, and they get away with it because nobody stops them. Nobody stops them. Oh, there he is, the idiot Bezalel Smotrich called on war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu to take advantage of the fact that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is in Turkey and prevent his return. He's a sick man, Smotrich. And here a group of 10 rabbis met privately with the New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani on Monday, urging him to consider how his public criticism of Israel could affect the safety of Jewish residents amid rising anti-Semitic hate in the city. Some called on Mamdani to soften his rhetoric and focus more on local issues, while others defended his right to criticize Israel, but urged him to use greater nuance, consistently distinguish between the Israeli government and American Jews, and condemn Hamas. Rabbi Rachel Timona said, criticism of Israel and support for Palestinian freedom should be accompanied by clear recognition that American Jews are not responsible for the Israeli government's actions. The meeting came after Mamdani publicly referred to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a war criminal, and later acknowledged that New York City's mayor lacks the legal authority to arrest him. And this is 7 hours ago. It says Iran has placed ending the war on Gaza among its conditions for reopening the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most vital oil route. Senior official Moshe Rezai said the strait will remain closed until the U.S. ends its wars across the entire region, including in Gaza and Lebanon. And again, there they are. Artillery across southern Lebanon again. Let me see your comments. Is Jerusalem to get demolished yet again for their evil deeds? Kathleen, we know something's going to happen. We don't know just what, but they are going to be held accountable. Yeah, there will be accountability. Okay, this is talking about the family. The Palestinian-American family pleads for food as Israeli settlers and forces besiege their home. They can't get out. And again, this is like every day around the clock. Israeli occupation forces storm the town of Zaire, occupied West Bank, and fire tear gas. And pro-Palestine activists shut down Brighton's L3 Harris arms factory in Mosulcum, UK, over its role in arming Israeli genocide in the Gaza Strip. And here, Israeli occupation forces storm the town of Beit Farouk, occupied West Bank. Israeli occupation forces block an elderly Palestinian's access to his home in Hebron's Old City. They're just so evil. Blocking this old man from entering his home. Just so evil. Here's this man walking with his cane, and they're preventing him from entering his home. Something wrong with them. And here, Italian philosophy Professor Emeritus at the University of Naples Federico II, Eugenio Mazzarella, has launched an initiative to nominate children in Gaza for 2026 Nobel Peace Prize, aiming to highlight the suffering of Palestinian children, making them a global symbol of victims of war, and call for the protection of children in armed conflicts. The initiative was introduced in an article published by the Italian Catholic newspaper Avvenire. Mazzarella said awarding the prize to Gaza's children would send a message affirming every child's right to life, dignity, and peace, while preserving the memory of children who lost their lives, and carry forward hope for a peaceful future for survivors. The initiative has received more than 450 endorsements from Italian political, academic, cultural, religious, and trade union figures. Let's share that. And here, Israeli occupation forces detain a Palestinian in Al Arub refugee camp, occupied West Bank. This, like we said, every day, every single day, around the clock. Terrible. Israeli occupation forces demolish a Palestinian agricultural facility east of Tubas in the occupied West Bank. Because this is what they do, the evil that they do. Now, this is a photo. It says of West Bank before and after 2 years in Israeli detention camps. As photos of Palestinian detainee Nadim Abu al-Rub from Tulkarem, occupied West Bank, before and after 2 years in Israeli detention camps. And yeah, and this thing that would like I talk about Mike Huckabee. Israeli attacks threaten Christian presence in Palestine. The Palestinian Churches Committee. Now, Mike Huckabee, you don't hear much from him when it comes to this issue. The Palestinian Presidential Committee for Church Affairs warned of escalating Israeli attacks against Palestinian Christians and their religious institutions, noting that the attacks target clergy, nuns, churches, monasteries, church property, institutions, alongside land seizures, settlement expansion, and restrictions on freedom of worship. The committee said their practices threaten the deeply rooted Christian presence in Palestine and are driving more Christian families to leave the country. The committee also highlighted the Christian town of Tebeh in the occupied West Bank, describing it as the last entirely Christian town in Palestine, and pointing to its declining population and the departure of Christian families since 2023. On August 10th, the Israeli military declared the town a closed military zone, days after an attack by Israeli settlers against its residents, according to the Palestinian Wall and Settlement Resistance Commission. And why isn't this in the news? Why don't we hear this more in the U.S. media? And here, Palestinian detainees Mohammed Filan and Jihad Karaja from Safa, west of Ramallah, reunite with their families after release from the Israeli detention camps. And here, they're just horrible. Israeli thugs lead their livestock onto Palestinian land in the village of Al Mugir, occupied West Bank, Palestine. So they're letting their livestock onto Palestinian land. They're sick. And if this was being done to them, it'd be in all the news media. But since it's being done to the Palestinians, you don't see it on all the news media. Here, a protest was held outside the CBC building in Toronto to condemn the killing of Palestinian journalists in Gaza and criticize what demonstrators described as the silence of mainstream media. Photos of Palestinian journalists killed in Gaza were displayed on the sidewalk alongside Palestinian flags, flowers, and signs reading, "Do not forget Gaza." Protesters also chanted slogans condemning CBC's coverage and its silence over the killings. Okay, Kathleen says good night, thank you. Also, let me see what else Kathleen says. She says, like a thief in the night, come, Isha Jesus. Good night, she says, thank you. Good night, Kathleen. And let me come back over here. Here, Israeli artillery targets the town of Beit Yahun in southern Lebanon. Around the clock, Israeli artillery targets the town of Kafir Roman, southern Lebanon. This is what they do. It's horrible. They want to take over other people's land and build their own settlements. I mean, this is disgusting. This is here with limited resources and a severe shortage of heavy equipment. Palestinian civil defense teams working alongside the Red Cross continue to recover bodies from the rubble of a home in the west of Gaza City. Horrible. And you're like, where is the world? Where is the world to help Gaza? Yep. Under the cover of Israeli occupation forces, extremist Israeli settlers storm Hebron's old city. Horrible. Destruction left by Israeli occupation forces after demolishing 12 Palestinian commercial shops in the town of Anza. That's terrible. Demolishing 12 Palestinian commercial shops in the town of Anza. That's just pure evil. And here an activist shares a notable moment upon arriving in Spain, saying an airport customs officer admired his shirt reading "Israel kills children" in opposition to the genocide. Israeli occupation forces set up a checkpoint and obstruct Palestinian vehicles in the southwest of Nablus and the occupied West Bank. They're just so evil and vicious. They just can't let people live their lives. And again, Israel is withholding around 1,700 Palestinian bodies for potential future prisoner swaps, despite Hamas holding no Israeli hostages, according to Haaretz. Security discussions reportedly showed that Shin Bet chief David Zini and the Israeli military support the policy, which legal experts have questioned its legality. The practice follows earlier disclosures, including an October 2025 report by the Palestinian National Campaign for the Retrieval of Martyrs' Bodies, which documented around 1,500 withheld bodies of the Sid Taiman military facility. The practice continues despite a so-called ceasefire in Gaza. They don't follow any rules. They just do what they want to do. But everybody was screaming, "Release the hostages," when it was Israeli hostages. But Palestinian hostages, you don't hear the world screaming out. Israeli occupation forces vandalized the last remaining water pipeline supplying Al-Ras Al-Amar and Al-Baqiya's plain in the northern Jordan Valley, leaving the community without a reliable water source. They don't care. It's terrible. They're just so evil. Okay, we read that. And here's the house that they're just sitting out there. Extremist Israeli settler gangs besiege a Palestinian family and their Palestinian-American family's home in the town of Qasra, occupied West Bank, and terrorize residents. This is just so disgusting. They're evil, and nobody holds them accountable. Because basically Ben Gvir, he's all for this. Israel is now presenting itself as a rising global power in artificial intelligence, but that ambition comes after nearly 2 years in which advanced technology was used amid its genocide on Gaza. As countries invested in AI to shape their economies and societies, Israel also deployed AI-driven systems in military operations against Palestinians. The contrast raises a deeper question: can a state claim to be building the future while its technology has been used to deepen one of the worst humanitarian catastrophes of our time? It's just so evil. And they're not held accountable. That is the problem. And here, Israeli settler gangs storm the village of Al-Magir, occupied West Bank. That's what they do. And they're not held accountable. Israeli occupation forces should just arrest them all. They're not supposed to be there. I mean, something like that was being done to Israelis. It would be known by the world. It'd be on the world news. But since this is happening to Palestinians, it's not. And here, pro-Palestinian activists gathered in New York City, unveiling a huge bus stop advertisement poster to honor the soul and legacy of Palestinian journalist Anas al-Sharif, who was assassinated by Israel last year. The tribute brought his name to the heart of the city, keeping his voice and the stories he documented from Gaza alive. And it's sad, he left behind a wife and children. A Palestinian man and his children began clearing the rubble of their demolished home in Khan Yunis by hand. In preparation for moving their tent onto the debris amid the occupation's refusal to provide aid or reconstruction equipment, and to escape the harsh conditions of displacement in al-Mawasi. This is just horrible. It really is. The occupation's refusal to provide any aid or any equipment to do anything to help them. Just so evil. The Palestinian Mohammed Hassan Antoli was transferred to the intensive care unit after being assaulted by Israeli occupation forces. He has been paralyzed since being shot by occupation forces 4 years ago. Horrible. This is what Israel does. You don't know what to say after a while. You're seeing all the evil day in and day out. That Israel, and you just could say, the U.S. as well, because the U.S. gives them money. You have U.S. citizens in their occupation forces. It's just terrible. And Elbit Systems, Israel's largest arms manufacturer, reported higher quarterly profits as sales grew by double digits. Second quarter revenue rose to $2.29 billion, while adjusted earnings per share reached $4.14. And order backlog hit a record $32 billion, with 73% of orders coming from outside Israel, mainly Europe. Disgusting, all to commit evil. It's horrible. This is just a horrible world. Israeli occupation forces have set fire to several homes in the town of Hadatha, southern Lebanon. I mean, it's horrible. They just want to clear out the area and build Jewish settlements, and they're not being held back. Oh, you hear talking going on, but Israel's not going to give up, and no one's going to hold them accountable. Here, specialists work on manufacturing and fitting prosthetic limbs at a center run by the Gaza municipality dedicated to treating and rehabilitating those who were amputated during the Israeli war on Gaza. This morning, Israeli occupation forces demolished several commercial shops in the village of Anza, southwest of Jenin, citing the absence of Israeli-issued construction permits. Meanwhile, Israel doesn't issue the permits because they want the places to be demolished. I mean, it's sick. It really is sickening. It's just such evil. And Palestinians hold a vigil in downtown Nablus, north of occupied West Bank, calling for an end to the suffering of thousands of Palestinian and Arab political detainees in Israeli prisons. This is disgusting. Israeli anti-black activist Shefi Paz shared an AI-generated video depicting African asylum seekers being collected from the streets of Tel Aviv like garbage. It's so disgusting. Paz, who has been tied to senior Israeli officials and has appeared at the Knesset, captioned the video "Sanitation Department, we're here for you." How evil. That is horrible. Such horrible people. Israeli occupation forces carry out an explosion in the town of Majdazoun in southern Lebanon. And they're not being stopped. I don't see the Lebanese army doing anything, but they're weak to begin with. Then you're going to have them complain, or you're going to have some people complain if Hezbollah tries to defend Lebanon. It's sick. It really is. You know, without Hezbollah, Lebanon would have been part of Israel if it wasn't for Hezbollah. How horrible. An infant suffered suffocation this morning after inhaling tear gas fired by Israeli occupation forces in the town of Al-Magir, northeast of Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Horrible. Horrible. And here we go again with Israeli occupation forces are bulldozing. Yes, Israeli occupation forces are bulldozing Palestinian land near the town of Tumas Ayeh, northeast of Ramallah, as part of their efforts to expand nearby colonial Israeli settlements, which are illegal under international law, and somehow illegal is not applying to the Israelis, even though the ICJ had said they've got to get out of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. They do not belong there. But do they leave? No, they don't. Is there anybody to get them out? Where's the UN forces to get them out? Israel has to get out of Gaza. Out of Gaza. They have to get out of East Jerusalem. They have to get out of the West Bank. And there need to be forces actually to get them out. Because they are not leaving. So they have to be pushed out. And all those living in the illegal settlements, they have to go and pack their bags and get out. International law applies to them as well as everybody else. Oh my goodness, here's Trump. U.S. President Donald Trump said the biggest change he has seen in recent years is the shift in support for Israel and Jewish people in Washington, claiming that Israel once had the most powerful lobby in Washington. He also pointed to Democratic Senate leader Chuck Schumer, saying he has become virtually a Palestinian. You know, the actions of the Israeli government is is the problem. When you commit a genocide in Gaza, and we see Israel's treatment of the people in Gaza, it's horrific. It's beyond evil. People want nothing to do with Israel. And what they're doing in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, Lebanon, occupy. And basically all Israel is a destructive force. They're just horrible. A Palestinian detainee during an incursion, how could be saying anything? Israel is violating international law. And there the U.S. is silent. Where's the world to stop Israel? From its illegal actions. And now the U.S. puppet, that's in Colombia, officially recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, despite the territory being internationally disputed and occupied by Israel since 1967. The government of Colombia recognizes Israeli sovereignty over the territory, as well as the right of that state to protect itself against external threats. Colombia's foreign ministry said the decision comes amid Israel's expanded military presence in Syria following the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government in December 2024. No, it's just the U.S. and Colombia are recognizing this. The rest of the world doesn't. Yep, only the U.S. and Colombia recognize Israel's claim over Golan Heights. The rest of the international community does not. Israeli occupation forces abduct an elderly Palestinian man while grazing his livestock in the Al-Hadida area of the northern Jordan Valley, northeast of the occupied West Bank. They're just so evil. So they're arresting an elderly man. It's just because he's doing his work. Yeah, he's grazing his livestock, and they arrest him. It's sick. They're pure evil. Palestinian home was reduced to rubble this morning by Israeli occupation authorities in the village of Al-Zawidin, south of Hebron, in the occupied West Bank, under the pretext of construction without an Israeli-issued permit. Well, that's virtually impossible. That's just a way of getting around the fact of wanting to wipe out, ethnically cleanse the area. They say, but we're going to, we're going to demolish your home because you built it without a permit that we will not issue. I mean, it's sick. That's how sick they are. They're just this Israeli government. The whole society is a mess. And here, an ambulance team from the Al Orzala Ambulance Association has survived an Israeli drone strike while evacuating people wounded in an earlier strike in the town of Kfar Rabin in southern Lebanon. I mean, it's just horrible. And nobody stops Israel. Israel wants to occupy the area, and they have expansionist goals, and obviously the U.S. is in on these expansionist goals, stealing other people's land. This is fired tear gas at civilians in Al Mugir village, east of Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. Yeah, so this is what you do: fire tear gas at people. That's Israel. I mean, and then they wonder why people are furious with Israel, and people want nothing to do with Israel. It's their actions. Locals inspect the destruction after Israeli occupation authorities demolish the home of slain Palestinian man Farouk Ramadan in the village of Tel, southwest of Nablus. It says Ramadan, 41, was killed alongside three cousins on July 24, 2026 by Israeli forces while defending his village from a violent attack by armed settler militias. This is just horrible. So they have to be the ones to suffer. Homes get demolished because of the illegal Israeli thugs. I mean, this is just so evil. Something has to be done with Israel, but nobody will do anything. Everybody just lets them do the evil that they do. Nobody stops them. Yeah. Colonial Israeli settler militias under army cover are attacking the village of Al Mughar, northeast of Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. So this is every day, around the clock. This is what they do. And nobody's stopping them. The U.S. obviously is on board with all this. Mike Huckabee obviously is. This is all illegal under international law. Colonial Israeli settler militias under army cover are attacking the village of Al Mughar, northeast of Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank, because nobody's stopping them. That's why they do what they do. Okay, we talked about that. And this was on August 10th. Israeli occupation forces fire flares while storming the town of Talmud, south of Tubas, in the occupied West Bank, because this is what they do every day. It's the same. This is what they do. It's sickening. And they get away with it every single day. The U.S. is on board with it. It's on board with the evil. And the so-called Christians in the USA do not care about the Christians that are descendants from the original Christians. They don't care about them at all. I mean, it's really sick. So it's like there is no real Christianity in the U.S. because if there was, they would care about the descendants of the original Christians. Oh yeah, and Wayne Santamon says, "Hi Dee, there is an arrest warrant out for Bashar Assad. It's virtually unenforceable as he has impunity protection in Russia. Close to 3 years. Nearly genocide Gaza and no one hardly is doing anything apart from Iran." I know, this is what's infuriating. It's maddening. To me, it just shows the evil in this world. If you're not doing anything to stop Israel, it's just the fact they want to weaken Iran, and they also wanted to put a puppet in there. Bank is not a sudden deterioration, but rather the result of decades of unresolved conflict that have deepened the unlawful Israeli occupation drive. The Palestinian Authority kicked them out of the territories. And you look at in 1948, what happened to the Palestinians? They were forcibly removed from their homes while reducing waste. Military dispute. Syrian Aviation Authority Chief Omar al-Husari said Sunday that Syria's General Authority of Civil Aviation has taken control of Hamim International Airport and begun a technical assessment ahead of the potential resumption of civilian flights. And the Yemeni Armed Forces spokesperson announced that the forces targeted Saudi military deployments, weapon depots, and command headquarters in Al-Muqa and Al-Tadwin military camp in Marib, Yemen. The spokesperson detailed that the operation was carried out using a large number of ballistic missiles and drones, which precisely achieved their objectives, resulting in the deaths and injuries of dozens of Saudi and Saudi-backed militants. The armed forces, he stated, will continue targeting Saudi military deployments which seek to escalate the aggression and establish control over Yemen, and will resume their operations against Saudi military mobilization in the country. He also renewed a warning to Yemenis whom he accused of being deceived or misled into cooperating with Saudi Arabia, calling on them to abandon the path of collaboration and treason before it was too late. And here Rezai said Tehran is demanding the release of Iran's frozen assets and a region-wide ceasefire covering Lebanon and Gaza as conditions for reopening the strategic waterway. Yeah, he says Iran won't reopen Strait of Hormuz until U.S. changes course. And a massive explosion. So this. And here we go again. UNIFIL has documented 552 Israeli violations in southern Lebanon in just 3 days, between Friday, August 7th and Sunday, August 9th, including 455 artillery shells and 97 violations of Lebanese airspace, most involving drones. UN Deputy Spokesperson Farhan Haq said 229 shells fired by the Israeli army on Saturday represent the highest number recorded by UNIFIL since June 21st, while the UN force also reported an Israeli airstrike in al-Mansouri and Israeli tanks firing shells that landed around 200 meters from a UNIFIL position in Mace al-Jabal. UNIFIL also discovered weapons, unexploded ordnance, and explosive devices across its areas of operation, including a 107mm rocket launcher and several rockets found alongside a road in Frown, as well as explosive devices in Sabin that were destroyed in place. The figures come amid continued Israeli aggression on southern Lebanon. In 3 days, it says 3 days, 552 Israeli violations in southern Lebanon. And as we say, there needs to be action. Action is needed to stop Israel. And here, the Zawiya oil complex has come under a series of attacks in recent days, including an attack on a fuel tank containing around 4.5 million liters of gasoline. It says Libya's NOC warns Zawiya refinery may shut down after drone attacks. Terrible. Okay. And let me... Okay, well, I'm just going to call it a night. It's late here. Yes, 12:06 a.m. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Wayne, Kathleen, and Evelina was here on my stream that got disconnected. But I want to thank everybody for being here and spending your time with me. And, let's continue doing what we're doing. We have to keep sharing information. I mean, this is horrible. Horrible. What's happening in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. And as much as Israel's not supposed to be there, they continue to be there. No one's holding them accountable. It's infuriating, and it's something we have to keep talking about. Sharing information, making people aware that this is still going on. Writing people, there's people like to write their elected officials. It's just so horrible. Yes, Wayne says free Palestine. I agree with you 100%. Free Palestine. Yes, we all got to continue. Wayne's out there, he protests. We all have to do what we can do. So thank you so much for spending your time with me. Wednesday, I will be here with Dinarde. Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So again, thank you for spending your time with me. Good night, and free Palestine. Free Palestine. Save Palestine, save humanity. And good night, everyone.